Welcome to Fear It Goes, the podcast all about taking your fears with you and doing it anyway. I'm your host, Brandy Taylor. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Fear It Goes. Today we have a very amazing guest. I'm super stoked to have Lani on with us. You guys have met her once before, but today we are talking about how to improve this isolation period with your kids and school. Because I know for myself, I have had some interesting challenges with my little guys and working with them online and how easy or not easy that has been. So today we're going to talk about some ways that you can help with that and some of the holes that we're finding, things that could be bettered. So welcome to Fear It Goes, Lani. It's such a pleasure having you on again.
Thank you. It's great. I love it. Thank you for inviting me.
Always a pleasure talking to you. Always a pleasure. So I was thinking about this last week. When we first started classes online, my oldest, he is a very great self-learner. So we have no issues with him. He could just be given work in a textbook and he would be fine. My youngest, however, which you know, because we've had him with you for the past few years, he's the kid that needs some help. So he's the kid that has questions and that needs a little extra direction. And currently, the way that our system has set up the online learning, it's basically like you go in, here's your lessons, read it, do it. And that's your instruction. And my youngest has found that extremely difficult. And then on the other side, so that puts me in the teacher position, which has not been my joy. I like teaching things. I do like teaching things, and I'm a coach. Of course, I like teaching things, but I like teaching very specific things, and I don't like teaching my kid.
Right.
Well, it was some things. Like, we had a lot of fun actually writing a story, he and I, and because I'm a writer, and I had a lot of fun with that with him. We sat down, we wrote a story, and came up with the intro, and came up with the guts, and then his ending was. It's funny the way kids' minds work. His end was kind of ridiculous and hilarious all at the same time, but good on him to bring in COVID into the story. Good on him. And to make it something that was a little bit lighter instead of something so heavy. But I wanted to talk about some of the interesting challenges that we're facing. So like I said, my youngest is definitely not a self-starter or self-learner. He really needs direction, and he often needs a little extra help when he's doing this. So what would be some oh, Lani. I'm sure you're experiencing this with some of the parents that you've had discussions with. What are you doing with these parents?
You know, I've spent a lot of time the last 2-3 weeks talking parents off the ledge.
It does feel that way.
Yes, it does. When it comes to education, there's some big lessons that are emerging from the whole pandemic and the lockdown and the social distancing and whatnot. And we have to remember that human beings are really pack mammals, right? So when we start taking our telling our kids they can't go play with their friends and they can't do that, it creates a little bit of anxiety for them as well.
For sure,
so
it does.
have to be understanding of that. Some trends are coming forward, and I just kind of like to put this forth before we talk about actual strategy. Parents are now getting a sense of how challenging it is to be a teacher.
Oh, yes, I can attest.
So this is really good for teachers because parents are going, wow, I can't, I've been trying to get this kid transferred out of my class for the last 2 weeks, except it's my own kid. And I'm going to kill him. So,
you mean I can transfer my kid out of this class? Yes, please. Just kidding. Love you, Brian.
But they're seeing what what it takes to be a teacher, and being in front of a classroom is a very, very challenging place to be. But in some cases, parents are also saying, as you had alluded to, they're also saying where the child is struggling in some skill set areas, and primarily in the areas of reading, writing, and math. But it's good to note that these are primary building blocks of education. So if you're seeing it crop up, then it's something that's been there for quite some time.
Right.
There's also this underlying realization that without live interactive lessons, the learning simply does not translate well for all children, which is what you're describing with your son. The one son is fine with it. The other, it's not translating well because the skill set areas are different in those areas. And the big thing is parents are also seeing the fundamental flaws and shortcomings of a standard education system. All of those flaws are starting to surface. And it has nothing to do with teachers. It's the way the system is structured.
I would totally agree. I have friends who are teachers, and they are really good at what they do. And this is the interesting challenge I find with classroom settings, is you have kids who learn all different ways. Some that, again, like my oldest, self-learner, no problems whatsoever. So he's an easy kid in class. Although I will say this, when he was in grade 5, 6, he often would get distract other kids. We were told, I think he's got ADD. I don't think my child has ADD at all. I've seen lots of kids with ADD, and he definitely does not exhibit true signs of a kid with ADD, which is now apparent as a self-learner. But it was the first thing that teacher said, and it's the thing that's coming up again with my other son now. I think he's got ADD. It's an interesting viewpoint from a parent stand when your teacher says to your child in a parent-teacher meeting, it's not your fault you can't focus. I was like, we're going to, watch diet. So we're going to increase your omega-3s. We're going to help out with that because that'll help with his focus. But it's also interesting the stages that boys or girls go through and their ability to be able to manage and maneuver that time with education. So for my youngest, I think he's really a very active kid. And if he's sitting too long, he struggles with that. My oldest was the same way through that stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The kids go through a very kinesthetic stage where they have to be learning through emotion and learning through manipulating objects. And
right. So how does a teacher manage this in a classroom where kids are sitting, that's what I'm saying. Like I find it, I give it up to teachers. You have incredible dynamics in a classroom of some kids that can sit there for long periods of time, other kids that can't. And therefore what? It makes it a challenge to teach them, or it makes it a challenge for those children to learn in that setting.
Right. So, one has to take a look at the variations in a classroom. And because, their regular system is set up the way it is, it's very, very difficult for teachers to do that, which is why when we set up the NAS project, every child is their own class. So
I love that.
They're not disrupting anyone else. And they're learning the way their brain wants to actually process information, which apparently is a novel idea. But
no, it's not. What are you talking about? Everybody learns pictorially, visually. Everybody does. Darn it.
Yeah, that's we get it. That engaged educators, we get it. Not all geniuses learn the same, and I am a true believer that if learning differences were a huge problem for society, and meant to be a huge problem for society, genetically it would have been bred out of us by now. But there are true gifts with kids that learn differently.
Absolutely. I think the same is said for kids who are autistic or on the autism spectrum. They are such incredible gifts they bring. Why would you ever want to tamper that? Why would you ever want to do anything but encourage what their gifts are And we do often, we try and make them fit in the mold of society, right? How they fit, how do they adapt? How do they become like everybody else? They're not like everybody else. They bring their own special. Anyways, that's a different topic.
Right. But when you look at kids when they learn differently, and yes, we have an Alberta curriculum that teachers are trying to somewhat adhere to. It's difficult, but if parents could number one, cut themselves some slack. You're not a teacher, so don't expect that you can do things that teachers can.
Hallelujah.
Well, what we want to do, yes, what we want to do is just to make sure that kids are working on those fundamental building blocks. So, kids think differently than adults do. And I go back to a university study that was done many years ago where, you give a group of adults a paperclip and go, okay, list all the things you can do with that paperclip. And it also come out with, maybe 20, 25. But to give the same paperclip to little kids, and they'll come up with hundreds of things you can do with that paperclip. But they will think outside the box. They go, well, does it have to be made out of metal? Can it be, 7 feet long and made out of styrofoam? Because then you can use it as a kayak.
I love it. It's creativity in its finest.
Exactly. Yep. So, parents, have fun with this right now. And no, they don't have to be going to school for 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. But they do need to work on those fundamental building blocks. So base mathematics. Can you do base mathematics in a game format? Sure you can. Can you do reading with them? Sure you can. Can you do storytelling, which is base communication skills? Sure you can. So all of those kinds of things. Writing is important. So one of the best things you can do with your kids is have them journal. So give them 5 minutes and say, okay, I want you to journal. I want you to talk about how your day is going to roll out, how you picture things rolling out. One of the things we had in one of our newsletters just this past month, we put in a calendar. Mm-hmm. And so kids got to pick out things that they wanted to do during the day and plug them into their calendar. And then the parent would go, okay, so you have this gap between 9 and 9:45, why don't we plunk in 15 minutes of reading and 20 minutes of math, and then you can go play your computer games for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then we're going to come back and then we're going to do some other kind of learning things. But so that they get control over some of their calendar instead of you trying to push the calendar at them.
I will say there is massive power in adapting that system. My boys loved when we put that in. Thank you for that, by the way. We blocked hours, but they loved that they had control over, I get to pick when video games come. I get to pick, because we talked about things that were absolutes that had to go in the calendar, right? So breakfast, lunch, dinner, obviously. We have a cooking class that we do 2 times a week, and then 1 dinner or lunch that they have to make. So cooking class can be baking, it can be whatever they want, and I'm there helping them and teaching them. And then the other one is I'm helping and probably teaching, but we're working together to do these. So those are a few times a week. So we kind of have those blocked in, and then they have obviously school time, and we had a reading time blocked in there as well. And then the rest of it's like, well, what am I going to do with my time? We're going to have some outside time, or we're going to have a workout time, or we're going to have something that moves our body because we need to do that. Right. And now that the weather's nice, oh my God, I'm so excited. So excited. It's finally blue skies here. It's been very dreary and snowy for the last while. We still have snow on the ground here. It's crazy. It's melting, but
wow, welcome to the east side of the Rockies.
Oh my goodness. So, yeah, that's right. You're not even here. You are in the sun and the beautiful weather. Yeah, trust me. It's so nice to see blue skies, and we have double digits all this week and moving forward, which is so great. So now activity becomes part of our daily schedule. And you and I were talking about routine and how important that is for kids and for us too, because there's certain things like getting out of pajamas. So the kids and I made a deal. I said, okay, that's it. No more staying in pajamas all day long. Like, and they said, oh, come on, one day. And I said, one day a week. We can stay in pajamas. Outside of that, I want you to get dressed, because it just becomes like this weird mental state of complacency.
Exactly. And we need to keep normalcy in the picture, because as we were saying earlier, if we're social distancing and they can't play with their friends and they can't
Yep.
go through that normal sort of routine, we have to build our new normal, which is not playing with your friends, but with Zoom and a lot of the other platforms, you can certainly have visits with your friends. If they're on a gaming platform that allows them to play a game against their friend,
Yep.
virtually. Even if the kids, you want to keep them away from video games, if that's something that your family doesn't like to do, is computerized games, you can play Battleship with the kid across the street.
What do you mean?
Right? The game Battleship?
Yeah.
So coordinates and whatnot, if they have a game and you have a game, or you can actually you can go online and print out the grids.
Yeah.
And then you can be on a platform or FaceTime or sit across the road on the driveway.
Yell at each other. L14!
Yeah, there might be some calls to the authorities thinking that somebody's plotting something, but it's in that in itself is graphing, and that's math.
It's so funny. I never thought of that. And my boys my oldest loves board games. Loves board games. It's an interesting idea between him and his friend, because his friend's got some of the same board games, so they could easily, literally play that game together that way. Oh, that's such a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine that I'm helping her develop a board game for corporate teaching. What we did is we had 8 people come in on a Zoom call.
Yep.
And connected a phone to the computer and put the phone over top of the board, because it's a new game.
Yep.
Nobody has it because it's not released yet. But we were all playing. There was 8 of us playing, and all 8 people were from across the country.
Yeah.
And she was just moving the little guys on the board, and we were all rolling dice on our phone app.
That's so awesome.
So there's lots of ways you can do that.
You can still
board
connect.
games are not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you and I were talking about that before, about communication is not just about language and the words that we're saying and speaking. It's also the visual cues we get, the body language we get, the inflection in tones. So there's so much to be said about seeing someone like you and I are on Zoom right now. And there is so much to be said about this form of communication in times when you can't be in person, to still have that connection that is meaningful.
Absolutely.
And kind of bringing this back to the school side of things, that's one thing that I love about what you're doing with NAS that is kind of sad that we don't have happening in the public system. Although I will say this, my friend's son, his teacher is doing live classes online. So he gets live lessons, which is great. And that's one thing that NAS does, is live lessons with teachers. And again, you're getting all those visual cues, you're getting the whole communication through the video and audio. Whereas right now, what we're struggling with is it's just, here's your lesson, read it and do it.
Right. And there doesn't seem to be any standardization between schools.
There is none.
Yeah.
Which I find really interesting.
Yeah. At the NAS project, kids have, the way it's set up is every child actually has their own program. So we're used to diversification. However, having said that, all students come on a Zoom call at 9:30. We have a group meeting for about 10 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, just to talk about how things are going, especially on a Monday morning. How was your weekend? This morning it was one of our students' birthdays, so it was a little special this morning. But 5-10 minutes just to check in, see how they're doing, take the pulse of what's going on. And then they go off into separate classrooms with whatever teachers they have. So there might be a group of 2 kids, or there might be 3 in another one, and then there's one-on-ones going on. But all of that happens between 9:30 and 11:30, and then the kids break for lunch for an hour, and then they come back for half an hour as an entire group and do science together. Mm-hmm. And we have a zoologist who has her master's degree in zoological conservation. So we're talking a lot about how this is impacting the animals, and how, humans are no longer encroaching as much as they usually do. And you can see worldwide, I read an article this morning in Kruger Park in Africa. The lions are laying on the roads, on the asphalt road, because it's nice and warm, and they're going into fall, and they're just taking advantage of the fact there's no vehicles.
Right. Well, I mean, they were talking about like the canals in Venice that were like clean for the first time in forever. And it's amazing how fast an ecosystem can rebound when it's not having this constant stress added to it. And we are so similar that same way. When we stop adding stress to ourselves, we are our own ecosystem. It's amazing how fast our bodies can rebound.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. Stop adding stress to the system.
Yeah. So the NAS project, kids are done all of their lessons and all of the school by 1:00, and they have time during that. So they're not listening to a teacher all that time. The teacher will instruct for, again, 5, 7, sometimes 10 minutes, and then they'll be on screen along with the kids. But the kids are working on their journals, or they're working on an assignment that the teacher has posted, but the teacher is right there. So, the kids will virtually raise their hands up and go, I have a question. And go, okay. Yeah. So it's very much like it was when we were actually in school, but we're just doing it virtually. So we really haven't missed a beat, because we've kept it as close to normal as we possibly can.
I can see massive benefits with that. Like, one of my oldest, his name's Ben, one of his teachers came on and said, we're going to have a group call. I just want to see how things are going, and if, the workload is too much for you guys, or if it's just right, or what's going on. I want to do a check-in. So she had I don't know if it was Google Meetings or if it was Zoom or whatever platform she used, but she had this call with the class, and it was really interesting because I could hear them in the other room, and just all the kids talking, and they were so happy to have this connection with their teacher. So the teacher is doing this once a week. Now, that's one of his teachers. The other teacher, none. No communication. It's just all online. It's so fascinating. Same school, same grade, not same communication points or touch points. But those students were able to ask questions, or I had a problem with this, I didn't understand this. Because right now, when you have lessons online, and this is where my youngest struggles, if you have lessons online and there's anything in there that doesn't make sense to them, they have no way of asking.
Right.
Through email, you know what I mean? It's great that the NAS project is available, like you have teachers available at all times. And I know with the NAS, the way that you guys set up is so smart that no matter what, the teacher knows where that kid is at any given time by the end of the day. It's not like a week later or whatever. And I don't even know if the teachers are looking at the assignments that we're submitting. I don't even know.
I would hope they are.
I would assume they are, but again, I don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing's been communicated. There's no grading. I don't know what's happening with this stuff we're submitting. Are we on the right track?
Yeah. Feedback is so important, and the system just isn't set to do it. We have to understand too, not all teachers are comfortable with a video platform.
Yeah.
And we have stress, and teachers have stress. Teachers are worried about, filling their curriculum and getting done what they're supposed to get done. And I think what we need to get done is to make sure that all of our students and our kids are okay. And for some kids, school is their only sort of contact point with other people.
Right.
And now if that's gone, then that's going to cause them stress as well. So anything parents can do to increase normalcy, to build in routine, because boy, if you're going to bed at 3 a.m. and getting up at 3 p.m, boy, when we go back to what is going to become our new normal, they're going to have a hard time readjusting to that. So
yep.
Routine is a big thing to keep stress levels low. I know at 9 o'clock I'm going to be doing this. I know at 9:45 I'm going to be doing this. I know that I have cooking class at 11 because my stomach's starting to growl a bit. So I know I'm going to do cooking class, but what kids don't understand is cooking class is actually math. It's fractions.
Measurements.
It's it's measurements. It's decimals. It's all sorts of calculations that you're making in split seconds. And now, making bread. Okay, so let's talk about yeast and how that creates the rising action of bread, and why does that happen? And now it becomes a science class.
Right.
So everything that you do in your house is education.
Okay, you're going to laugh at this. So Ben and I have taken 3 runs. I have never had this issue with a recipe ever in my life. I am quite an accomplished cook and baker. I've been baking my whole life. So I've never had a problem with a recipe. Never. French macarons have been a very big challenge for us in this house. I don't know why, but the 3rd run was yesterday. So first one was complete flop. I tried using a sugar substitute. That was disastrous. And I think that a sugar substitute could work. I just think that sugar that I was using, or the sugar substitute I was using, was not the right one to use. I think I'll try a different one next time. However, so we went sugar the next time. And then with meringues, you think you want all this light, fluffy air. No, you don't. You actually have to kind of push some of that air out, or the meringues don't work, which we didn't know. So we had problems with it the second time. 3rd time, this was interesting. Temperature in the oven is extremely important, and recipes vary from one to another. And that temperature was not right for us, nor was the time that they are supposed to sit in the oven. So I'm not kidding. I have 4 recipes up. They all have different temperatures, and they all have different times. How is that possible? And then we have an actual macaron mat, like silicone mat. And then we had parchment paper. So we used both. The parchment paper did not allow these things to rise the same way the mat did. I don't know why this is the case, but our 3rd run, we actually had stuff that looked almost like them. They rose on the mat like they're supposed to, and they had the consistency like they're supposed to, but they were still slightly off. They cracked on top, and they're not supposed to do that. So we'll go at this. So now this is our experiment, and both of us have agreed. We're like, we're not going to stop until we get this right, because now it's like, I don't care. I'm never buying these things. We're going to make them. And it has become a very interesting experiment. 2 things are happening here, though. Yes, we're in a science class. It's cool. We're doing measurements, because the one recipe we did was all in grams. We had to convert it into cups. And so that was good. And we are also in the mental experiment of try, adapt, figure it out, make your little pivots, make your alterations until you get it right. I cannot ever stop thinking about Einstein and the adaptation it took to get to the light bulb that worked.
Edison.
Functioning light bulb, right?
Yeah.
What did I say?
Einstein.
Oh my God. Yes.
But you ask people, where was Edison when he invented the light bulb? And they'll go, what do you mean? And I go, well, was he in a lab? Oh yeah, he was in a lab. Was he by himself? Oh yeah, he was by himself. He wasn't by himself. There was hundreds of other scientists working on it. But when you doing recipes, one of the really important lessons for kids, especially, when you're in Calgary, is the altitude and how that
Yes.
impacts recipes and why it does, right? So baking at sea level is much different than baking in Calgary.
Baking soda, baking powders, the amount of flour, an extra egg, all these things. Yes, it's true. I hadn't actually thought of that with these, but these are such simple. There's so few ingredients in a macaroon. Like, to actually make the actual meringue cookie is literally like 3 ingredients. And you have to really be careful with any water that gets into it. So as we're coloring the meringue, Ben says to me, he's like, well, that's what it calls for, not the liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, because the red was like had hardened. And I said, oh, this one's dead. And he goes, well, just add water. And I'm like, no. We can't add water to this. It'll wreck it. And it could have been what actually caused, well, it's hard to say. I'm still trying to figure out, I'm sorry, I know we're veering off in a little bit of a cooking discussion here, but not really. I'm trying to figure out, we use the exact same recipe, parchment paper to mat. Parchment paper did not rise the same way the mat did. Why? I don't know that answer. And I'd like to know that answer. They all have to sit for a period of time. This is crucial when you're making stupid French macarons. They all have to sit for at least half an hour. I highly recommend an hour. If you're in higher altitudes, highly recommend an hour where it sits before it goes in the oven, because it needs to kind of crust over a little bit so that it will rise. But it didn't do the same from parchment to that mat. I don't know what would be the difference.
Well, it could be texture of and it could be airflow, right?
I don't know. It's very confusing to me. We'll figure it
out.
Well,
I do know a couple of scientists that I could tap into and ask.
I need to know the answer. I have a problem. I need a solution. Darn it.
Right.
And that's one of the beautiful things the kids and I have talked about through this time too, is that there's not only ever one solution to a problem. Never think that there is only one right way, because we're looking at what it says online for how to fix these problems, and some of them work and some of them don't for us. Why is that? Because there isn't just one solution to a problem. There are multiple solutions to any problem.
Right. And really a recipe is just a suggestion. And a menu in a restaurant is a list of ingredients badly organized.
I find cooking is very much a suggestion, and I take it the way I want to, always. Baking, quantities are so crucial in baking.
The thing about the possibilities here when you're at home with your kids in education and you have a cooking class. So now what you can do during this time where kids are not at school, you can now teach them to make one thing. And maybe that one thing is tacos. And get them to master tacos, right? So by the time we all get back to our new normal, you are now going to have kids that have a repertoire of recipes, and now you can just assign days. Okay, today is your day to make dinner, and I'll get all the ingredients, and you're going to make dinner tonight. And this is going to last long after we've stopped this social distancing and
very true.
Self-isolation and stuff like that. So these are skill sets that kids can develop now. Take stress off parents later, because they'll all go back to work if they're not already there. I'll go back to work, and now you have at least one, maybe 2 nights where you're not having to make dinner because the kids got this.
Yeah, like Brian is my youngest, and he loves tacos, and he makes them. That is his one meal that he can make no matter what. He can always make it, and he's been watching Gordon Ramsay over this break, and he's fascinated by Gordon Ramsay. And it's lovely because Gordon Ramsay does some really nice lessons online on YouTube. And I said, buddy, let's just pick one recipe that you want to make, and we'll learn how to make it. That can be your cooking class.
Yeah, the more you can have kids master something, right? The more often that you can do that and allow them to master something, that increases their self-esteem. That increases their ability to say, hey, I can learn, I can do this, I can create this, I can make people happy, I can make myself happy, I feel like I have a worth. All of these kinds of things that teachers are trying to instill in students every single day. And not the parents aren't, because they are when they come home from school. But now that you have them during the day, take this, embrace this opportunity to begin, okay, I can watch my child master something. Remember when kids were really, really little and they started to walk and you're so excited because they took a step and it's like everybody's cheering.
Mm-hmm.
And then now we just expect them to do things but nobody's cheering.
Right. And be good at it.
Yeah.
Why didn't you do that right? Instead of, and you know what, and I can't say that I'm perfect with this. I catch myself now in moments with them where I'll say, you know what, I'm really proud of you. One of the lessons that came up this week was an art class. So one was an organic sort of style still life. So we had a bowl of fruit and it was just organic shape. So it was rounds and, and lines, and it was more fluid. And then one was geometric of the same thing. And he did a beautiful job representing both. Right. And he went into it saying, I'm really bad at art. I can't draw. And I said, buddy, yes, you can. And he said, well, can you help me? And so I drew his start lines. I just drew a couple lines for him. And I said, okay, so this is what you do. And we're going to make sure we shade, because that gives dimension and that gives depth to the picture or to the piece of fruit or whatever it is that you're drawing. And then from there, he really took off and did something really beautiful. His interpretation was wonderful.
Kids are great. And I remember back in the day when my kids were little, that I sat down one day and we were talking about drawing and whatnot, and I said, drawing is the science of shadow and light.
It is.
And once they went and they looked at me and they went, ah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. That was a big thing with him also.
Right.
He's like, I don't know how to do this. It's going to look terrible. And I said, baby, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be you.
Right.
And you look at some of the most incredible artists of our time. Picasso's art and his stuff is really out there, abstract. It's very different. I mean, he's also done some really beautiful, very detailed, fine detailed work. He brought his own spin to what his interpretation is. And I think that for kids, it's really important for us to teach them, whether it's cooking, whether it's in art, whether it's in math, whether it's in whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be, okay, so math, maybe not so much, because there is definitely methods. But it doesn't have to be perfect. It's your interpretation. And as long as you get to the end, it's okay. And it's okay to mess up. We're messing up all over the place with this recipe, right? We have problems and we'll figure it out. And that's part of the joy of learning too, is getting to the conclusion.
Well, one of the things that we always talk to our students about is if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn.
It's very true. And what is failure? The kids and I have had this conversation 1 billion times. And I swear to God, it feels like 1 billion times. But we talk about failure all the time, about it's not failure. It's just an you do something, you have an outcome, you like the outcome, you don't like the outcome, you want the outcome to be something else, so you have to alter it. You have to tweak it. That's it. So it's not about failure, it's about tweaking. It's about just repositioning, reframing, altering it some way to get a different conclusion that you're looking for.
Exactly. And teaching them that it's okay that things are different. It's okay that your drawing doesn't look like my drawing, or when kids understand that learning in itself is a science, and a lot of it is experimentation. And how do we do this? What does it look like?
And it's okay if you don't get to the right answer right off the bat. Because again, teaching kids that failure isn't what we have societally accepted failure as, which is this horrible thing, If we teach kids that it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to have an outcome or a conclusion that is not the one that you're supposed to get to, now you just have to adapt. Now you have to alter that. You have to change something in your equation to create the outcome you want. And it's not the end of the world if you don't get that outcome right off the bat. Right?
Right. So, when you have your kids at home and teaching them all these really, really valuable lessons, don't be afraid to tell kids why they're learning that. Right? I remember a grade 11 student coming in, and I was working with him because he was struggling at something. He goes, well, it's just, I don't know why I'm studying this. And I think it was social studies. And I said, well, the social studies curriculum is all about globalization and learning that what we do here impacts people on the other side of the world and vice versa. And of course, this whole COVID-19 pandemic thing really spells that true now.
Right.
But
the global connection.
Yeah. But a lot of kids don't understand why they're learning something. And it's important for them to know why they're learning. Why do we teach math? Well, we teach math because it's critical thinking skills, it's problem solving, all of those kinds of things. And when you come right down to it, when you look back on your school system and your school age years, when you look back on it, other than the law of physics and the rule of law and the fundamental building blocks that you mastered, anything else you learned in school has now been proven not to be true or is now irrelevant. Right? So It's important that we master those building blocks. So that's why, science is important, because the laws of physics are the laws of physics, and the rule of law. And I really firmly believe that while we have our kids at home, these are some of the things that we should be focusing on. We need to teach our kids things that artificial intelligence can't do. So, a calculator can't really multiply it, just successive adds. But having kids understand that multiplication is just a different way to add is an important skill. But what we need to teach them is how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic, and how to be innovative. Mm-hmm. And above all, they never, ever, ever forget what it means to be human. Those are the fundamental things we have to instill in our children. It's important. Because yes, we don't know what's going to come in the future. And it's important to learn how to cook. Yes, it is. But if, you're going to train your student to become a chef and your kid is 6, let's start looking at, go on YouTube and take a look at robotic cooking. Because there are restaurants that just use robots. And people are freaking out, going, oh my gosh, it's going to take away, jobs from human beings. Not so. There's a restaurant in, I think it's in Boston, that does noodle bowls, all done by robots. They're all circulating woks. And the people that are working in there are switching out bowls underneath the robotic woks. They're really focused on customer service and that touch point,
the connection,
or the human connection. So now people can focus on that human connection and not have to worry about standing over a hot stove.
It's interesting when you talk about cooking too, because you think it's consistent repetition. Mm-hmm. Where is the creativity in that though? Or maybe there is some, I don't know. But I mean, my least favorite part of cooking, I love to create in the kitchen. I love combining different ingredients and different spices and coming out with something interesting or innovative or delicious. Mm-hmm. But I hate the chopping. I would love to have a sous chef, someone who does all my prep work for me. Oh my God, I'd be so happy. I'd be in heaven. Okay, can you cut this up for me? And I'm just throwing things together and mixing those ingredients. I'd be in heaven. And honestly, I would love a robot to do that for me.
They exist. They do exist. And they're trained by, Michelin chefs, and they chop and they
Right.
dice and they slice and all of those kinds of things so that you don't have to. So we have to really take a look at what important roles our kids are going to play in the future, and what they can do, and that artificial intelligence can't do.
I often think about as new technology comes in, old technologies will leave. The workforce will change.
Mhm.
People are very afraid of what's coming with AI. And I think with AI, we will see new opportunities that we never ever had imagined before. Like before computers existed, we didn't know what coding was. We didn't
Right.
know what cloud was. We didn't know what blockchain was. All this stuff that has come in with new technology requires us to be able to work these systems and use our minds in different ways instead of being on the line of a factory. Or, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that goes back to never forgetting what it means to be human.
So I think, okay, how is this going to affect law? Makes me think of self driving cars. I see two possibilities. I'm about to hit a car in front of me, or I can veer left, or I can veer right, or whatever the case may be. And I'm going to hit this there, or I'm going to hit a person there. Which choice do I make? How does the AI decide which one to do? In law, same thing. If I'm a lawyer or I'm AI, which direction do I go? Because if I'm AI, I have no emotional content.
Mhm.
I have no emotional viewpoint. So I can look at it from a very disconnected standpoint, which sometimes can be extremely helpful. But in decision making,
Mhm.
where does that play? Because there's no compassion, no empathy.
Yep. And that's why we need to teach our kids that, and make sure that our kids understand that, right? It goes, I think it's the movie Wall-E, where
Mm,
at the end of it, the everybody's going around in chair. They never walk anywhere. They have these movable chairs and stuff, and then they suddenly discover there's a swimming pool, right? It's like, wow, where did that come from? Was that there all the time? And it's if we become complacent and
right.
forget what it means to be human and all of those things, then we're going to get into trouble.
And the
If
adaptability, right?
Right, right, and we need to teach kids how to adapt, and wow, now we have this worldwide platform that we can use to teach kids to adapt. Here, normal is not normal, but is
Yep.
this our new normal? And
And
so,
how many people are struggling with this change, right?
uh-huh,
It's a very drastic change imposed very quickly.
uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
for some people, like I'm great with change. I can take change. I could take change on the turn of a hat, no problem. But my mom is not like that.
Right.
She struggles with change. So when change is coming in, it's every part of that change is difficult to manage. So it's the ability, and this is a trained skill. You and I've talked about this so many times. It's a trained skill set.
Well, I think people just it's not necessarily that they don't like change. People don't like being changed, and so it's a pivot, right?
Right.
It's we're all having to pivot, and sometimes it's just you just have to pivot 6 degrees, and it makes everything different. It's like the NAS project. We were all live in the classroom and interacting that way, and all of a sudden schools are closed down. So okay, now let's think about it. Let's pivot and let's produce.
Right.
So, and it's not that anything really changed except for the fact that teachers are now on a screen as opposed to
But
being
that's
face to
critical
face.
thinking. That's the word I was looking for, or the
Sure.
term I was looking for. It's critical thinking, right? If
Yeah.
we are able to, because critical thinking is about being able to adapt, finding different solutions to the same
Mm.
problem, asking how, asking why, asking what can be done, being able to make that instead of getting stuck in the I can't, I won't, this is hard, or I look very often from the space of I get stuck in the fear, not necessarily me, but people in general get stuck in the fear. And we are bombarded with a lot of fear right now through our media. And what happens when we go into that state? You're not in full capacity. Your frontal cortex isn't working the way it should be in any given moment when you're in fear. It just isn't. You have a amygdala hijack.
Yeah, and I think, with Earth Day coming up, because what's that? 22nd?
Is that right away?
It's coming. Yeah, it's coming up the next couple of days. Excellent time to talk about the Earth and we're now in pre-World War II carbon emissions. Like the Earth is going, oh, thank you.
I can breathe.
Yeah. And so, what has shutting down industry for a period of time done? It's done a lot for Mother Earth, and that's a huge experiment. You look at things that have come off in the pandemic. Not all of it is bad.
Oh, for sure. I think there's some great things that have come of it.
I often wonder if our collective IQ will raise after this.
That's a very interesting question to ponder.
Isn't it?
Through this pandemic, I've done a lot of reading and watched a lot of videos and read a lot of articles. And you and I were talking prior to this episode just about this one scientist I was looking at. And he's quoting stuff from a physicist. And I'm digging into levels that I never thought I would dig into with this pandemic. And there's a lot of information out there. And where do we stop? I wanted to know the true core of what was happening. I'm still finding interesting information that relates to that. But I'm also seeing the how do I want to word this? Kind of like I like to call things the storefront, the front, right? What you seem to see on the veneer.
Mm-hmm.
And then what really sits inside. I look at us that way. I look at life that way. What's really going on? And you ask, is there going to be an increase in collective IQ? I think some are fighting that immensely. I think there's a discrepancy between two sides. And I feel like sometimes I'm of two minds.
Right. We all are.
Right? Where sometimes you're like, okay, this is what's really going on here. And then there's other times you just get caught up in the media, in the whirlwind of really this fear-based perpetual feed. And why are we being fed that way? And what comes of that?
Right. I found
because that dumbs us down, right? I just said we are in amygdala hijack. What does that mean? Frontal cortex isn't working. Are we creative in that zone? No, we are not. Right. We are not thinking full capacity at that point. So will we have a dumbing down, or will we have a raising up? I don't know.
Yeah, and I have this thing. I came out to BC to look after my mom because I'm originally from BC, and I came out here to look after her, and then the whole lockdown thing happened, and so now I'm here. But my mom watches the news every night at 5, right. And I don't. I choose what news feeds I will look at. Yep. I tend to read an article, but I don't watch news because I find that very unhealthy, both mentally,
yep,
and physically, because my anxiety goes through the roof. But
exactly,
I just leave. And she can watch the news, but I just leave. And even when I'm at home, I don't watch the news because I find a lot of it sensationalized. And I will go and I will read journals, or I will yep. read articles written by scientists who are proven in their field. I don't tend to play into. I don't even. Facebook is a big thing where people are going on Facebook and oh my gosh, the sky is falling.
Right.
And we have to teach our kids, if we're getting sucked into that vortex, we need to teach our kids what it means to actually step back and go, well, that's not true, right? We're seeing now how people, are not developing their critical thinking skills because they're not questioning. It's just like, oh no, this is happening. It's like,
because this person said so.
Right.
Are we being led, or are we rising up? This is a very interesting question around a collective IQ, a collective intelligence that shifts or drops. And I don't know. It's such a good question, Lani. Such a good question.
Right. And so, you as a parent having your kids at home, now here's the challenge. How do you increase their IQ? And really, our IQ is a very archaic measure of,
yes, it is,
of intelligent beings. Einstein couldn't pass his college entrance exam. So what does that say about standardized testing and exams? Like, hello. But can your child explain to you about something? That has more to do. When I'm testing children in my office, I learn more about how they get to an answer than by the actual answer.
Right.
What is that thought process? What are they doing? And I can go, okay, I see how you're approaching this. I see how you want it. And it's one of the things that, I spent 2 decades in the classroom, both as a teacher and administrator. But when I left the school system, because I saw that there's lots of flaws and there's a better way of doing things.
Asking why? Does this work like this? Is there another way?
Exactly. Right. But it doesn't mean I teach, 16 different algorithms to get to the same math answer.
Right.
Because that just confuses kids, right? Because then they don't know which one to use. But having kids step back and respond to a question instead of react to it,
mm-hmm.
which in itself is a massive skill to have. Like, let's just step back and respond to stuff. You think about, medication. If you respond to medication, that's a positive thing. But if you react to it, it's a bad thing, right? So we have to teach our kids to step back and respond to a situation instead of react to it. And education, if we can get them to step back and go, okay, I can do math. I can do cooking class, and that is math. I can, communicate my ideas without having to speak if I can write them down. I can, put into permanent form something that I'm thinking of, and then come back to it 2-3 days later and go, do I still believe that's true?
Right.
And pattern and take a look at how their thought patterns change over a week. Mm-hmm. It's amazing because kids flip. Kids are smart. I've never met a stupid child, ever. Stupid adults, on the other hand, tends to be lots of those. Usually on the freeway at 6 o'clock.
Too. But that's patterning too.
Yeah. But I'm sure, on the freeway at 6 o'clock when all the stupid drivers come out, even that's less now because people are driving. So, less people are driving. So
3 weeks, half a tank of gas.
There you go.
I didn't even know what that was. No wonder gas is so cheap right now.
No one's using it. Yeah, for sure.
Demand has gone down massively. Yeah.
And it's good. And thank heavens for truckers. My cousin is a truck driver, and thank heavens for them keeping the country moving and the train systems and our cargo moving, and we've come back to a very fundamental state, and I, as a rule anyway, anytime I go to a store, all my life I have always thanked the cashier. I've always thanked the people loading the shelves. I've always done that. I remember when I started teaching, that caretaker was walking down the hallway, and I said to him, hey, thanks for coming in today. And he stopped dead in his tracks. He turned, he looked at me, and he goes, well, I have to go to work. And I go, it's a choice. You didn't have to come, but you did come. And I just want you to know that what you're doing today is valuable.
And you're appreciated.
Exactly. One of the things I have always taught my own children, and they're adults, but I've said, when you get a job, you don't get paid for the hour. You get paid for the value you bring to the hour. So make sure it's very valuable. And people don't understand that. If you got paid for the hour, you could just stay home and get paid, which is, what some of us are doing now. But that's not going to last forever. But,
no.
I think if we can teach kids those valuable little nuggets, it's going to go a long way to get them to understand routine and why we have it and why we need it, especially this time when normal is not normal.
Yeah.
But if we can get into a routine, yes, getting up in the morning and getting dressed and having breakfast. And one of our students one morning came on the screen and he's got a dress shirt on. Nice. Because his dad usually goes to the office every morning. But at home, he goes to his home office, but he still has his dress shirt and his tie on.
Yeah.
So, what we do, kids are watching. So be careful. Because kids watch and they watch more so what you do than what you say.
Of course. So
pattern it for them. Get up in the morning, have routine. Stay away from the alarmist kinds of news channels and stuff that's going on. And for heaven's sakes, have a conversation at dinner time and at breakfast and at lunch. Now you have a captive audience. And one of the things that I found very valuable when our kids were little, we used to have word of the week.
Oh, I love that.
We would come up with a word, and usually something that rolls off the tongue nice, like evidently, or fortuitous. Words that, build your vocabulary, because now's your opportunity. So do word of the week. And so how that works is you pick a word at the beginning of the week, and you all discuss it at the dinner table and come out and you spell it and they all pronounce it, and you give the definition and what it means. And then during the week, their challenge is to fit that word into normal dinner conversation.
I love it. And this is a great exercise for adults. Increase your vocabulary.
Exactly. And I remember, because our kids are all 2 years apart, and the oldest one would get it, the first day after we gave the word. So Tuesday, she would work it into the conversation. And it can't be just a random sentence, right? It has to work into the conversation. So it takes some skill. The oldest one would get it Tuesday. The middle one would get it by Wednesday, Thursday. The youngest, sometimes Friday, and you think, man, are you going to get it this week? And I remember my husband saying, and I think the word was fortuitous that week. And my husband had asked me something about what had happened during the day, and I had said, wow, this is very cool because this happened. And the little one looked at me and went, well, that was fortuitous.
You're like, yes, yes, you got it right. That's the right meaning.
Yes. So, games like that are fun and it's a challenge, build your kids' vocabulary. And, let's not forget 70% of reading comprehension is vocabulary. Yeah, though.
Right. I love that exercise. Oh my God. I love that exercise. There are just bizarre things happening with this generation. The words that they are creating, which have no meaning whatsoever. None. Mm-hmm. Zero. So my oldest is in grade 7 and he uses the word foot. And foot has meaning. It's a part of an appendage, or it's the bottom part of your appendage. But he uses like, I don't even, it's such an abstract word. The way he uses it, it means nothing, but it means everything. It could have 50 meanings or no meaning at all. It's so confusing. It's so confusing.
Well, it's, and I would when I used to do a lot of public speaking, I would say to everybody, close your eyes. And everybody in the audience would close their eyes. Like, okay, and I want you to pick up an imaginary hammer. And when you've got that hammer in your hand, I want you to lift it up over your head. And so when everybody had their arms up, I'd go, okay, now put it down. Now I want everybody to open your eyes. And I'd say, how many of you had a wooden handled hammer? Somebody put their hands up. And how many of you had a metal handled hammer? People put their hands up. So how many of you had a sledgehammer? Some people put their hands up. How many of you had a mallet? People put their hands up. I said, I said one word, and none of us have the same mallet.
Of course.
So it gives depth to our English language, and our English language is so rich, and actually one of the best laid out languages in the world in depth, not on the surface. So which is why English becomes very confusing to people, but it is one of the best laid out languages in the world in depth. But when we start having conversations with our kids, like how many definitions is there of hammer? How many definitions are there of foot?
Right.
So, if you're speaking imperial measurement, foot is 12 inches, right?
Right.
So there's all sorts of conversations you can have around language, and you don't have to be a linguist to do it, but it's valuable for your kids. If you started, like you start now, but if you started 3 weeks ago doing vocabulary building with your kids just at the dinner table, their vocabulary would be massive.
I love that. I'm actually going to incorporate that for sure. And I highly recommend any of you who are struggling with getting into some sort of rhythm routine with your kids, the calendar and Lani, do you mind if we just stick that? Can we have a PDF that we stick into the show notes?
Sure, we can do that.
That would be awesome. She gave a great example, and seriously, my kids love it because they get to incorporate the things that they want into the day, and we still incorporate other things into the day that have to be done, and everyone's aware of what's going on, and they're excited because they get what they want in the day. It's not loose. It's structured, but structured in a way that's fun for them, and they create their schedule every day. My kids do. They create their schedule every day. We have our locked in times, and then they write beside what that time slot's going to be. Certain things are consistent: lunch, breakfast, dinner. We know that those are always the same time. And we've talked about, should we do schoolwork in the morning? Should we do it in the afternoon? Should we do it split up? How do you want to do it? When are we going to work out? Well, we tried it later on. We didn't like that. So let's try it earlier. And we still have structure, but there's also some fluidity in those choices.
Right. And then you can have conversations of, why don't you like to work out in the afternoon? Like, why does it work for you better in the morning? So let's talk about physiology.
For us, it was, I have more energy in the morning than I do in the afternoon, or I just really I've done a lot of things in the morning. So now I just want to kind of mellow out a little bit, or have a good mental break or a good physical break. But yes, the discussion is wonderful. And I really liked that, again, we're adapting, we're testing things out. It's its own experiment, but the structure is in place, and there is routine that is consistent. And then there's still some fluidity, because when I first sat down and said, look, we need to really start looking at how we're going to do this. We're going to block. This is how I had worded it prior to actually getting your email. I said, we're going to block our calendar. And my oldest went, I don't like that. He didn't like the idea of that structure. He's like, I don't want it to be so routined. And then when I showed him yours, he was like, I like this. It was the exact same thing. We just worded it differently. But he loved the example because it said video games. So for every parent right now that's struggling with kids and video games, trust me, you can use it as a really great tool. And it's a really lovely reward. And for them, that's still their social time, because I hear them talking to 4 or 5 of their friends at any given time when they're playing. They're never playing without someone online.
Right.
So it's social time for them too, and they need that.
Right. And they can also, do the schoolwork online as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, NAS project.
Yes, that too.
Yes, NAS project.
But if they, if you get a creative teacher, they might come out with an assignment that says, okay, get 4 of your friends online
Love that.
and discuss this.
Yep.
And then report back tomorrow. But, not all kids have access to computers and technology, and I understand that. But, you can, writing letters might come back into the mainstream. Who knows?
This is something that was brought up to me the other day, and totally an aside from anything to do with education, but just a really weird thought was, are the days of handshakes and hugs gone? Will that become our new norm? No more handshakes. And handshakes were always like not only a greeting, but a way to seal a deal. Like there was a lot of power in a handshake and what it meant. Is that really going to be gone? Because there's that touch. And then I think to myself too, the whole concept around human touch and how much we are distanced, how long that lasts, and what impact that has from us in a mental space, because it's so vital to who we are as a species. We do touch. It's a big part of who we are. I mean, there's tons of studies.
It's a big part of our culture for sure. And I don't think that will end. I mean, I still hug my kids, and
I obviously still hug my kids.
So it's not going
to go. But will you hug your friend? Will you still pat your friend on the back? Will you still do these things?
I think like anything else, I mean, if it was going to totally kill that, we would have stopped after the Spanish flu.
Oh, I love that idea, that this would not leave, because I can't even imagine a life without giving people hugs, heart to heart. And I can't imagine not putting my hand on someone's shoulder to comfort them, or not touching someone's hand. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine a world where it's just sterile, because that's what that would feel like.
Yeah, and
emotionally sterile.
I think while the pandemic is still on, people are going to be cautious and careful, but this too shall pass. It's I mean, I don't necessarily believe in religion, but in the Bible, it's over 465 times it says, and
this too shall pass.
It came to pass.
All things do.
It never says it came to stay.
But that's it, though. And the kids and I talked about this. Life is always moving, even when we feel like we're not. Even when we get stuck, even when we feel we're struggling or it's hard or whatever. Look back over your whole life. You're still here. Lots has happened. A lot has happened. When I've thought about different points in my life, different struggles I've had, regardless of what it may be, even when the kids were really young and the stages they go through, and you're like, oh my God, the stage is amazing and horrible all at the same time. I can't wait for the next stage because this one's tough, right?
Right.
The terrible 2 years of joy and pain all at the same time, because they're in these humongous growth periods. But all of it passes. And there's incredible lessons that we draw from every one of them. What incredible lessons are we going to draw from this experience now? Are we going to draw personally, collectively, societally, and globally? What lessons are we going to draw? And talking about your mom and watching the news, I talked last week in the last episode about what seeds are you planting in your garden? Are you always planting fear-based seeds? Because that's what you're going to get. You're going to just have fear-based trees, or fear, you know what I mean? Like, you are just perpetuating it in a bigger way if that's what you're planting. So watch what you plant. What are you doing in this time with your kids? I love the idea of a word of the week. I seriously love that idea. How are you teaching them to pivot when there's difficulty or a recipe that won't fly? Do we just give
Right.
up? Because seriously, it was like I had a workout day with the kids and I do HIIT and Tabata. So I do hard and fast. And they're like, go to exhaustion and then you're done. And seriously, my oldest had a very hard time following this. It was very frustrating because he was goofing around, totally like I had to keep stopping everything and going back. And a 20-minute workout ended up being like 45 or 50 minutes. Like it was just painful. And my first thought literally was, I'm never doing this with him again. That was my first thought. I'm not doing this with him again. And then I went, that's not teaching him anything.
Right.
What am I teaching him then? To just quit? No, I'm just going to pull up a little bit more patience and I'm going to teach him again. And when we did it the second time, he actually was much better. And we talked about form and I said, form's really important. Even if you only do 3 of these things, form is important. So if you do it, this is the way you want to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is how you don't hurt yourself.
Right.
And he was much, much better. And he's like, you know what? Actually, that was pretty good. Thank you for showing me. Thank you for taking that time.
Right.
Pivoting, being able to adapt. Because seriously, my first thought was, forget it.
Right. Right.
So what are we teaching them in this time that we're so close?
Right. And you have to look at everything as a teaching opportunity.
Life is so.
Right? This is my opportunity to teach this. And this is the opportunity my child has right now to teach me patience.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, the lessons they teach us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's so funny because kids very often do this. But you did this. But
Right.
you said this. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I reacted instead of responded. Or yes. And they're very quick to show you when you have done wrong, right?
Yeah, especially if they have a very large auditory sequential memory. They'll remember everything you said.
Yeah.
Which can be annoying.
Oh, yes. And I have one of those in my house. Actually, I think I have 2 of those in my house. Yes. All right. Lani, I want to say thank you so much for this time we've spent together.
You're most welcome.
Can you give a little bit more information on the NAS project, how people can contact you if they are looking for some more guidance and some more structure with the way that they are teaching their kids, if this is important to them, which honestly, I think this is a great opportunity for us to really look at the way our system is set up. Like I said, my one friend's son, he's got online learning. Lani's NAS project is online learning. You have, it's all online learning right now, but I mean live lesson or do it yourself. And so for you parents out there that are struggling with the do it yourself, there are other options. There are truly other options, and your teacher may not be able to facilitate the way your kid needs it. So look at other options. The NAS is an amazing program. I cannot ever say enough about this. Ever, ever, ever. Lani is brilliant. I love what she is doing, and it is truly a movement. And I wonder if this is the direction that I look at the education system from this space right now, and I think this could really change the way that we see education moving forward, because everything's moved online. We know where the holes exist. We know that some teachers or some kids will just learn easy, right? So if I'm a teacher, I could explain this to 1,000 kids, 1,000 online instead of my classroom of 20. And then the kids that are struggling, they have the additional teachers and resources to now tap into. Whereas before, one teacher with that group. I don't know. I just look at this as opening up opportunities.
Yeah, and it's certainly a game changer for sure. The NAS project it came to being when actually I was still in my teaching career and was looking at how the system is set up. We have 21st century kids going to 20th century buildings, which is not a problem. But they're going to a 20th century building, getting an education that's still sitting on a template from the 19th century education.
Incredible.
So, and we're not there anymore. So,
no.
say, for example, the provincial curriculum says you need 750 hours of math in a year, and 750 hours of English in a year, and 650 of science and social studies. My question always was, what if you don't need 750 hours? What if you need less? What if you need more? And this is where we're getting a huge gapping happening with kids, because they have to go with their class. They have to move with the class. So at the end of the year, they go on with their class in most instances.
Right.
But they haven't mastered what was back in October, but now it's June.
Right.
Right. So at the NAS project, every child is their own class. And at the end of the day, teachers pull up all of the data at the end of the day and can tell exactly what kids missed that concept and what kids mastered it. So the kids that missed it, next day, take those kids, you reteach that concept.
Right.
And then, so you keep everybody in the same track and the same lane, so that we don't have this gapping.
And the kid that got it can excel at the pace that they learn.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So your bell curve, the kids on either side of that never get left behind.
Right.
Because that's where we struggle, I think, with the system we currently have, is there's this clumping of kids that just are kind of in the middle, and they learn at that pace, and they pick it up relatively easily or well. Mm-hmm. And then you have the kids that are struggling on either side. So one kid that learns too quickly and they're bored out of their tree, so they're causing problems, right? Which I knew lots of those kids growing up, and I have one of those children. He excels very, very quickly. And then my other one that struggles with concepts sometimes, and if it's not explained in the way he learns, he doesn't get it. So he's on the other side, and he's not, by no means is he stupid, but he feels that way because he's not in the herd. Right?
Well, yeah, because they go, there must be something wrong with me because I'm not getting it as quick as
because I'm not getting this, but my friend is.
Right.
Because we're always comparing.
Right. And not all geniuses learn the same. So why would we expect to teach them the same? The only thing you can do in a system, and our system that we have now is based on a 19th century model that was Rockefeller. Rockefeller started the first school district, and he said he wanted a nation of workers and a nation of thinkers. Well, guess what we have, right?
Yes.
Because North American and Canadian systems are quite similar. Now, having said that, doesn't mean we can't change it, but we have to change it from outside of the system, because the system's not going to buckle.
Right.
So as parents, if the school system isn't working, then sometimes it's time to look outside and go, okay, what are my options? Like I said, I think when we started this discussion is, lately I've been spending a lot of time talking parents off the ledge, and friends of mine have given parents my email and said, hey, look, if you email Lani, she might be able to help you. And I spend a lot of time all day long just answering some questions. And you know what? I'm not charging a dime for it, just simply because I don't want our kids to get lost, and I don't want our parents to be so frustrated that they just give up, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we're working to put together Teacher in Your Pocket. So we're working.
What's Teacher in Your Pocket?
Well, it's just a subscription service that helps parents and feeds them all sorts of stuff for their kids' education.
Cool. When's that ready?
Well, I'm back to work on it when we're finished this interview.
I will say, becoming a teacher for one child has been challenging and a big lesson for me, not only in patience, but how to position things for different learning styles, which is adaptive for me. And I can take that skill set anywhere in life.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, these are great opportunities we have that we face in this time, even though they may seem just like a big struggle.
Yeah, it's pivot and shift.
Yeah.
And if
And
you're
recognize.
Yeah.
And
And
recognize.
if your audience wants to get a hold of me, you can put my email address in
I will
the show
be.
notes. But you can go to the website engagededucators.com, and there's some information there, and you can also contact me via that as well. But
And
I just want to help.
And on Engaged Educators, there is also a section that says NAS Project, NAS Project. So you can find out more about the NAS Project, which honestly is amazing. And if you are one of those parents that really, really struggles with teaching, honestly, I cannot recommend this program enough. I shouldn't say program, it really is. So NAS stands for Not a School.
It does.
Not a school project. And it is a very different way of teaching your children in the way that they learn, not the way that we expect them to learn.
Right.
Yeah. Help your kid thrive, not just survive the system. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a big believer in thriving, not just surviving. Big believer. That's what we do here at Fear It Goes.
There you go.
Thrive, not survive.
Yeah. Fear It Goes is a great program. Love it. Love it.
All right, go enjoy some of that vitamin D outside. I'm looking at a blue sky. I think I'm going to go for a walk and then get to work.
Indeed.
Okay, sweetheart. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you very much. Take care.
And that concludes this week's episode, you beautiful peeps. I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I hope you took some notes. If you didn't, go back and listen again, because Lani gave some really great advice. And honestly, I am absolutely incorporating Word of the Week. I think that's brilliant. And honestly, as simple as the schedule is, I highly recommend it. And seriously, get your kids out of their pajamas. Keep some sort of structure and routine. It will help them immensely in life in general. And also, of course, at this time when we are sitting at home and really, really looking for ways to make sure that we still have normalcy. So, my beautiful peeps, if you are struggling yourself and you're finding that you need some help, we are always happy to help you at Fear It Goes. I am all about helping you thrive, not just survive. This is one of the best times in your life. We may not get this opportunity ever again, actually, to take the time and really do something that helps us raise up, helps us come alive, helps us discover who we are, helps us discover our passions, and really, really drive some amazing success in your life. So take this time right now and really accelerate your skill sets, invest in yourself, spend the time that you've got and do something that's going to really, really amplify your life and create the life you want. If you need guidance, I am absolutely here to help you thrive. Until next week, my beautiful peeps, have an absolutely extraordinary week.